Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us on another episode of Weird Growth Podcast, where we hear about the strange and often unpredictable journeys which founders find themselves on in this startup growth space. Today, we're privileged to have Lucas Calleja joining us, who's got a really interesting career, not necessarily a founder per se, but has worked on some really incredible projects over the past, throughout his career. Yeah. Thanks so much for being with us, Lucas.
Yeah, look, Cam, thanks very much for hosting me, and looking forward to our discussion.
It's going to be fun. Yeah. And, we caught up, we met for the first time a week ago. We chatted for an hour, and I thought, we need to get the podcast into Series 2 mode. We've had a little bit of a break for a few months, and I think it's really great to have you here kicking off Series 2 for us. So thank you, mate.
Yeah, no, look, thanks very much. Fantastic to learn more about the Australian tech environment,
Sure.
and particularly over here in Perth. It's fantastic.
And so you're originally a Perth boy, but you have had an international kind of portfolio career. How would you describe? How do you introduce yourself?
Good question. So, born and raised in Perth, but after my undergrad at UWA, I moved to Sydney to study international management with a keen focus on emerging markets. So that took me over to Chile, Cuba, and Turkey, which was great because just the way that those markets operate when it comes to raising capital and really needing to keep acquisition costs low provided a fantastic basis for the rest of my career when I moved to London.
Yeah, so you're in London, and what were you working on when you arrived there?
Yeah, so look, I arrived at the end of 2016, and I joined British Airways. I joined their commercial team.
Okay.
My original focus arriving right after Brexit was looking at how to bring in foreign currency after the pound depreciated.
Okay.
So that was, it was fantastic. I was able to learn a lot about digital marketing and social media marketing and work with some fantastic large agencies like WPP and BBH.
Okay.
So that was a really great insight into, marketing done in an innovative manner with a very sort of legacy brand.
So yeah, big time. I'm halfway through the Richard Branson autobiography, Losing Your Virginity, and talking about how he started Virgin Airlines.
Oh, okay, yes.
With a single plane in the 80s, and big, British Airways were not, the friendliest of competitors, but a massive company nonetheless, and super interesting. Why? So can we unpick that a little bit? You were bringing in foreign currency as the pound was depreciating.
Yeah.
And there was a connection there with digital marketing, and what was actually going on there? Why did you need to do that?
Yeah, good question. So essentially, an airline can sell tickets. Let's use Qantas as an example. Qantas can sell tickets in Australian dollars, or it can sell tickets overseas and collect the revenue in, say, US dollars or pounds or euro. So let's say back in 2013 when the mining boom, sort of hit its peak, it was fantastic for Qantas to bring in Australian dollars because it had a few costs in the US dollars. But after 2013, the mining boom has sort of wound down a bit. The Australian dollar has depreciated.
Back down to 60 or 70 cents kind of thing.
Exactly, yeah. So all of a sudden it makes sense to sell tickets and collect US dollars or euro or sterling, because then when Qantas converts that into Australian dollars, they're left with more money. So how we did that at British Airways, essentially we would come up with marketing campaigns that would be focused on, let's say, the business class product, or London itself as a destination. And then we would send the briefs to local teams that we had in our hubs. So we had a hub in Beijing, another one in Hong Kong, which serviced not just Hong Kong, but Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia, Sao Paulo, and New York, and they service different regional areas from those hubs. And so they would create content which would resonate with local markets in local languages.
To sell those tickets in those jurisdictions.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah, cool. Yeah. So, I mean, like, with this podcast, we normally talk about that almost genesis early stage, you know, like the growth marketing. How do we just get this thing that almost doesn't exist yet off the ground?
Yeah.
And so it's actually why it's really interesting to have you on today, because we're going to learn about some of that big macro, like large numbers and that sort of economics of marketing stuff. You know,
Yes.
so it's going to be cool.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, you know,
All right.
happy to dig in.
Sure. All right, mate. Well, thank you.
Great.
So before we do get stuck in, I have a pop quiz. If you were to start a new business from scratch today, what would it be?
Yeah, very good question. So,
Put you on the spot.
So look, I actually had an idea today when I was running, and it's all about international travellers who come back to Australia and they need a quarantine for 2 weeks.
Now, very relevant.
Yeah, so think about these people. They're quarantining. They might have their laptop. They might have their phones. But what if they could rent out something for 2 weeks? Let's say a number of books. Let's say a piano, a keyboard, an instrument.
Yep.
They've got 2 weeks worth of time where essentially they need to stay focused, otherwise they're going to go stir crazy.
Yeah.
And if a company came along with a sort of solution-led offering and proposition as to, what can you do? How can we keep you occupied for those 2 weeks?
A quarantine quest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I love it.
The reason I was thinking about that was because I saw that, airlines are likely going to have to cut their flights into Perth. So, what if there was a way for an airline to rent out accommodation at cost in accordance with the government's quarantine measures, and then really start making some ancillary revenue on different I suppose products.
Yeah,
and
love it.
propositions.
And so
they
there's
can give.
actually a reason for people to fly here. They've got something to do for 2 weeks. It's
Yeah,
in the airline's best interest.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, airlines, they there's going to be a cap as to how much money they can make on bringing people back. But once they're back in Perth, can they help them keep busy for those 2 weeks? And this doesn't necessarily need to be an airline that does it. It can be a different agency. But
cool opportunity. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Thanks, mate. Well, I'm glad I put you on the spot. 'Cause it's great. Yeah, all right. Well, look, the other really interesting thing about your career is Revolut. I didn't, I've got to be honest, I hadn't actually heard of it. I'd heard of neobanks, and I was sort of broadly, up with the concept. But I'd really like to learn about what you did there. And what Revolut is about. If you could just maybe just tell people what a neobank is, what Revolut did over in the UK, and what you did there. That's cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, look, I'll sort of start it with how I arrived at Revolut.
Okay.
So, I enjoyed my time at British Airways, and I was a director of one of their pension funds, which was very traditional, old school sort of asset management. Lots of meetings and face-to-face business. But during some of these meetings, I would see different tech startups who would come and show different ways of how they would transform finance. Now, Revolut originally caught my eye because I travelled a lot, and I would go to Italy and buy an espresso for €1. And then when I would look at my bank statement when I got back to London, I would see not only had €1 been deducted, but another pound, so nearly another euro had been charged to my card as a foreign conversion fee.
Wow.
So that's not very nice, and an easy way to burn a hole in your pocket. So what Revolut originated was as a company that provided the interbank exchange rate to consumers so that they could save anywhere up to about 4% when converting foreign currencies, which is particularly relevant in Europe. It was founded in 2015 and since then has grown its customer base up to 12 million clients across Europe, the US, Australia and Singapore.
That's incredible growth
in
5 years, isn't it?
Absolutely huge. I mean, last year when I started, they had about 3 million customers, and they grew that out to 12 million essentially through community marketing, but also by positioning itself as the super app for finance. So it offers the card, it offers bank transfers globally, so not restricted just to the UK and Europe, but
Yep.
transfers to the US, transfers in Australia, commission-free share trading. So normally a retail investor would have to pay a brokerage fee of about £20 to purchase a share. Revolut not only got rid of that charge, but they got rid of the spread that banks charge when you buy a stock priced in US dollars,
Yep.
and then you convert that into pounds.
Amazing.
So there's a lot of different hidden charges that they've worked on removing and really just pushing transparency to consumers about how banking should be.
Yeah, so it really is that 10x improvement on the old,
Yes.
the old school finance
Exactly.
type. Industry,
Yeah, that's right, exactly. And it's
Yeah.
all done through an app, so everything is done very quickly. You've got all of your spending analytics. You can connect to all of the other different bank accounts you've got to really have a whole view of your finances. So it's fantastic.
Yeah.
My role there, however, wasn't working with consumers. It was working with businesses on the Revolut business proposition, which goes a step deeper because business finances are more complex. You've got cloud accounting software that Revolut was able to integrate with. You've got multiple employees that might need to access the account in order to set up payment approvals so that business owners know that their teams are working in a much more secure manner with a very clear audit trail. And then that's really useful for other stakeholders like consultants and accountants or tax advisors who might need access to the accounts.
Yep.
They can have access in a very standardized and secure manner, which brings up an opportunity for them to become partners of Revolut. And that's what I was focused on doing,
very nice.
so that they could generate new business.
So it was a B2B and almost a SaaS product in a way.
Correct.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, that's
look,
it.
I mean, the last week I've been trying to set up a second bank account just for our business, just so we can have a credit card sort of facility, and it's just like I've already been banking with Bankwest for 6 years.
Yeah.
Got all this sort of trading history. Everything's been sweet, and I just want to open a second bank account identical to the other one I've already got.
Yes.
And they want like a copy of the trust deed of the business, and they can't just be a fax copy. It needs to be an original.
Wow.
So all these hoop jumping things, which these banks are still, have this process baked into the way that they do business, and they can't change. That's so good to see that there's a lot of this sort of push to shake these things up.
Yeah, look, I mean, certainly in Europe, you in the fintech market, you're looking at a very saturated market. You've got multiple providers, both for business and retail accounts, that can onboard their clients online and remotely, getting certainly retail accounts open in seconds or minutes. Business accounts open very quickly as well. Yeah,
just click a button, open an account. You already know me. I've already got a bank account with you.
That's right. Yeah, I think that the problem for legacy banks is that they have a lot of legacy systems. So although they're very well aware of what these trends look like, it almost becomes a transformational project, which when you're dealing with legacy data and APIs and migration, which would need to occur, becomes very costly.
So you're better off just burning the house down and starting from a neobank from scratch. It's going to be a lot easier.
That's it.
I remember there's a Perth-founded fintech called Pin Payments. I don't know if you've come across them.
No, I've not.
It's sort of a bit like a Stripe type product, but it was originally designed so that you could have your e-commerce store and plug in your merchant banking kind of thing into the back end of your e-commerce store online. And they've just, I believe, been acquired by a big international player in the last few months, which is an awesome success story for WA startups. But they were telling this story about how every week they would receive trolley loads of physical statements from the National Australia Bank.
Yes.
And one of their big costs of doing business was having to shred these envelopes
Yeah,
of all of their
yeah.
customers' bank statements that the bank had no way of not sending.
Yes,
They had to
yes.
send these bloody statements somewhere.
Yeah, that's
and,
it.
and it ended up in their,
Yeah,
in their office. So.
and I think that's just at times can be a product of those legacy systems we were talking about. The cost to add the functionality in order to remove people from who have opted out from receiving the paper
Yep.
might actually be greater than sending all that paper, which is disappointing, but certainly something hopefully we'll see addressed.
God, yeah, it's got to be. So describe the process behind taking this the Revolut business-focused product and actually introducing that to business owners and turning them into customers. How do you actually build a system to do that?
Yeah.
A marketing system, I guess.
So look, I think it's really important, regardless of the product that you're trying to pitch. It's really important to understand your client, your target market, and being able to very precisely communicate what problem you're able to solve for them. So with Revolut Business, many of the customers knew that Revolut could save them money on foreign exchange fees.
Okay.
Some of them knew that it could save them time when it came to dealing with their accountant because of different accounting integrations. And then there were sort of the new products that got released that we were able to really pitch. For example, expense management. Many businesses, even today, keep all of their receipts in their wallets, in a folder.
Yeah.
Revolut was able to demonstrate to them that they were able to take a photo of the receipt and then have that flow all the way through to their accounting software. So it really solved the pain point of, once a year collecting all of the different receipts, doing a manual calculation or plugging all that into Excel or handing it over to the accountant and receiving a big bill for that. So it was really important to be able to demonstrate at scale what problems the business was able to solve, to do that through a combination of marketing, webinars, some more sort of prolonged pitches when it came to larger clients. So it was really important to get all of those things up and running, and particularly to identify any points of friction that customers would encounter so that we could preempt them and make it as much of a self-service journey as possible.
Yeah, love it. So much more than what a traditional bank would even care about. I mean, they don't give a rat's whether you collect your receipts or what. But the fact that you guys are identifying those pain points and actually creating something to address it is so great.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and so, I mean, there must be a certain level of measurability to understand, whether... so you were talking about that community marketing, webinars and education and things. How were you able to actually demonstrate that those things were effective in acquiring customers? Yeah,
that's a really good question, and really ties into a lot of the work that I'm doing now with Compositus. Essentially, when you've got different growth channels, it's really important to be able to break down those channels into funnels and understand what it looks like from the moment a customer comes into the funnel all the way down to conversion. So
Preach!
So I guess what you look at from a webinar perspective, you would look at, do you want to put the webinar on, say, the homepage of your website, or do you want to sponsor ads? That's almost two different sets of funnels, because if it's on the website, you've already got the inbound lead, and arguably you've already got a percentage of those inbound leads who will convert without the webinar. Whereas if you're sponsoring webinar ads, you're paying to get those inbound leads, and so you've got an additional cost. And so it's really important to track actually how much money do you need to pay in order to get X amount of webinar attendees. How many of those attendees will then sign up? How many of those attendees who have signed up will open an account? How many of those who have signed up and opened an account will eventually monetize.
Yeah,
and at the end of
nice.
the day, you've got to be able to tie that back to that original marketing spend
Yeah.
that you've spent to sponsor the webinar.
Yep.
So yeah, it's just really important to understand where the friction points are so you can increase or improve.
Widen out that funnel as you go.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. No,
Yes.
it's absolutely critical. I mean, what's the point of doing anything at the top of the funnel
Yeah.
if you can't show how it relates to the activities at the bottom?
Precisely.
And
yes.
then you can make good decisions about the rest of the marketing journey through that process about how can you make them better or
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. That's it.
spot
That's
on,
it.
mate. It's
Yeah.
lovely. So you get your like cost per acquisition or cost per lead.
Mm-hmm,
Then you can understand how much a new customer costs you to acquire.
Yes.
And then you can say, okay, well maybe it's too much, or maybe it's that's a really good channel. We should put more money into that particular
that's
channel.
it. I think it's really important also to understand lifetime value. So how much money an average customer will bring you,
Yes.
and you've got to account for churn as well. How many of your customers are actually leaving you? Sometimes the lifetime value is based on a lot of assumptions. The more assumptions you've got, sort of the weaker the model can be. Yeah. So what you can also look at to simplify it is how much money do I make off each customer on average in a 12-month period?
Okay.
And then
So it's like a proxy for lifetime value, maybe?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. And I guess regardless of what metric you used this year with COVID, that model would have probably got thrown out the window.
True.
But yeah, just being able to look at, all right, if I'm acquiring a customer for 100 Australian dollars, how much money am I actually making off that customer on average in a year? And when we look at acquiring a customer and acquisition costs, you've got to break it down. Do you want to consider customers that you're actually monetizing, or do you want to consider customers that you've just acquired but who might not necessarily be making you money? I think it's really important now, during this COVID-19 crisis, to really dig down and understand what's a vanity metric and what isn't.
Spot on.
Yeah.
Because it can feel good if you've got all these leads coming in.
Yes.
And the volume's there, but if it's not converting into revenue, well, what's the point?
That's right. You might bring in a real large amount of leads on one channel. Let's say digital marketing. You can really quickly dial up digital marketing and bring in a lot of sign-ups and a lot of onboards from a quantity point of view. But actually, when you dig in, you look at the quality of how many of those who have signed up or onboarded actually monetize. That might be lower than your organic traffic on your website, or the customers who are referred to you by partners or product integration partners. So yeah, it's really important to
to get that
that
understanding, you would essentially need to have data on each individual client or customer from when they initially had that initial touch point with your business through to becoming a customer. So almost on their customer file, you need to have the information on their customer file that this is how they signed up.
That's right.
I suppose.
That's right. Yeah. So look, I mean, when you dig into the tracking side of things, there's a wide range of tools that are out there that can be used. Certainly, I'm a fan of Google Analytics, when you get to a point where you're taking someone's email address, for example, and you're creating a customer ID on your database, it's really important to have a sort of field there which indicates the source. Did that come from digital marketing? Did that come from a referral onto a customized landing page?
Have that on a webinar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now, and that's really important to be able to understand and optimize per channel. But also, it's really important because having a really organized data set will just unlock more opportunities for businesses.
Yeah, you can start really figuring out like where are those low-hanging fruit and those opportunities to go hard. Yeah, that's
exactly.
Cool. This is great. We get into the nuts and bolts.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
don't often get to do this on Weird Growth.
Well,
really
that's what growth should be, I think.
So, you're not at Revolut now. You're did you say complicit? Is it
Compositus?
Compositus.
Yeah, Compositus. Yeah.
Tell us about that. That sounds really cool.
Yeah. So look, I opened up Compositus in March this year, really to focus on helping businesses drive strong unit economics. Now, the reason that I say that is because my experience in meeting different growth teams has been that a lot of the time there's a lot of focus on vanity metrics.
And how many likes does this post get?
Exactly.
How many followers have we got?
Yes, exactly. How many sign-ups? And there's not enough digging being done as to actually, from a revenue point of view, if you've got 10 people in a team that are doing different things, who has a positive trail of revenue behind them, and that's something really important because too often I think growth teams are very much focused on get the onboards, get the sign-ups, and then that's it. That's where our job ends. Actually, I think in the COVID climate, when capital is more difficult to raise, we really need to see businesses and growth teams in particular focusing a bit more on the monetization side of things, rather than just the
top of the funnel,
of the funnel, and then handing it off to someone else. I think a good growth team will have ownership of the quality of what they're bringing in.
Yeah, no, that sounds awesome. So what are you doing to sort of facilitate that?
Yeah, good question. So working with a couple of different firms in order to identify how their growth channels currently look. So looking at what are the key focuses that they've currently got, what are the types of opportunities that they haven't sort of touched upon yet, and that could be something like a product integration, which could lead to them opening a new addressable market. And really looking at what their funnel looks like, what type of tools they're using, and how you might be able to bring in new tools in order to optimize and drive some incremental gains that will really impact the bottom of the funnel in terms of activation, in terms of monetization, to keep the investors happy.
Love it. Yeah, it's a really nice sort of metrics focus.
Yes.
Getting into the nuts and bolts stuff. That's cool.
That's it.
Very cool. And what are your plans for the future for that?
Yeah, so look, my network is predominantly in Europe, so I'll be heading back there next week.
Terrific.
But ideally, what I'll be able to do is set up some retainer led work similar to Ammo Marketing. And really work with businesses to make sure that they're keeping an eye on the funnel as a whole, all the way down to monetization. I'm also working with an education institution in order to build out some micro-credential courses, and there'll be more on that in the coming weeks. So hopefully that way I'll be able to have a bit of an impact on students who are at university looking to enter, say, the startup world or the financial services world, so that they can really focus on what they should be driving on.
Yeah, can't wait to see that. You shared a few articles over the last few weeks. And we'll put some links to that in the notes for this.
But fantastic.
That's some really high quality content.
So thanks very much.
Thank you for sharing that. That's great.
No problem. We'll be releasing the next one this evening. So
cool.
You heard it first. It's on tools and considerations. So by considerations, I'm really referring to how growth can impact other teams, or how growth should sometimes take into account other factors like legal factors, risk factors, IT, security, and financial factors. So
all the big boy stuff.
Yeah, that's it. Or just a real sort of holistic approach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. We'll look forward to it. one big piece of advice for founders who are looking to grow? They might be a bit earlier stage, but definitely they're on board, that understand the importance of growth marketing and metrics. What's one big piece of advice you could give them?
Yeah. So look, the first piece of advice would be never underestimate the power of feedback from partners and your clients, because it's so important to understand what your product really does well, what your clients would like it to do, and who your clients and partners look towards when your product isn't doing the job. So you'll find way more out about your competitors from people that use your competitors because they need to, rather than you just having a look and testing it out.
The song of our people is so good. It's so good to hear. It's spot on. Customers come first.
That's it. Yeah. That's it. Yeah, and they are the the number one sort of data set when it comes to understanding your strengths, your weaknesses, and what other people are doing. So that's absolutely crucial, I would say.
Yep.
And then the sort of second point would be, when it does come to growth, understand, do you want to drive quality or do you want to drive quantity? I think that you should drive quality at the beginning, and then you're able to start scaling, really demonstrating and communicating well exactly what your product nails.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any sort of stories or examples of things that you've seen that have worked really well that surprised you?
Yeah. So
because that's the point of this stuff as well, is that we can all make assumptions about what's going to work.
Yeah.
And it's not until the metrics actually tells you the story, and sometimes these things are just very surprising.
Yeah. Look, I mean, that's a good question. One example I have is there's a story about a growth funnel. And let's say you have 100 clients coming in per hour into this growth funnel. However, there are multiple different stages, and the stage which you obtain marketing consent is sort of a third of the way through. So,
what do you mean by marketing consent?
In Europe, when you want to email a client or someone that's signed up, you have to get them to agree to the terms and conditions.
This is the GDPR.
GDPR, exactly. Yeah, I'm not sure whether GDPR is here in Australia.
Not in the same way as Europe.
No, okay, but no doubt eventually something similar will come along. So essentially, you're looking at 100 customers signing up per hour, but you can only contact 70 of them because that terms and conditions button,
is only
too low
by
down
70 of them.
Well, it's too low down the funnel.
Okay.
So the amount of sort of action points before a customer gets to that terms and conditions are so great that they're dropping off.
Yep.
You're losing 30% of your inbound traffic before you can even reach out to them again.
Okay. So how do we fix that?
Yeah, so fixing that really is a collaboration between the legal team and the growth team in terms of being able to demonstrate why the legal team should allow the terms and conditions to be pulled back earlier. Why is that right for the business?
Yeah.
And can the growth team actually move those T's and C's back in a way which is still compliant with different laws?
Okay.
So I hope that's a good example of a sort of a really important thing to consider.
Yeah, and potentially only a minor tweak, but you've got to deal with other parts of the business to get it across the line.
Yeah,
can increase the lead volume by 30%.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. So I mean, if you're throwing away 30% of what's coming in straight away, then that's something that you really should address.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to see sort of how many companies ask for your first name, your second name, your mobile number, T's and C's in the first instance versus just the phone number and then T's and C's, or email address and T's and C's.
So just changing up that order.
Exactly. Yeah. it's a great way to sort of do an A/B test or a multivariate test. You know, what is a consumer prepared to give in the first instance, and how early on can you obtain marketing consent without them feeling, actually, no, this is too soon.
Yeah, like, that's fascinating, mate. Something else we do a fair bit on Weird Growth is a little show and tell. So, you know, people sort of, I love hearing what's your favourite tool or gadget or resource or device or whatever that you're using right now. That, you know, that's really useful for you.
Yeah, good question. So look, I spend a lot of time working on different collaborations with others, and through collaborations, I mean article writing, you know, potentially helping friends or old colleagues with pitch decks, and we really use the G Suite for that. You know, it's a super basic tool, but so powerful. You know, just being able to share different things on docs is fantastic.
Google Sheets, you can collaborate, and
that's it. Nice. I mean, even you know, when you look at Google Sheets, you know, say a business is starting off, and that they want to eventually move to a CRM or to something a bit more powerful and sophisticated like Airtable. G Sheets is just a fantastic way to do the basics. Sometimes when you do move on to some of these more complex CRM systems and data management tools, you lose a little bit of control. Whereas you know, with G Sheets, it's a really solid way to start to organize your data, and it should provide the basis for how you then organize it when you migrate it into a CRM system, for example. So it's a great way to know your data absolutely inside out and know how you want to structure that as you scale. Yeah,
it's very hands-on and a little bit hacky, but does the job. And you know, if you've got some Excel chops, then you can make it sing. And like the beautiful thing about Sheets too, you can integrate that with Zapier or with other third-party things and do some automations and hook it up with other systems.
That's it. Which is absolutely fantastic. Zapier is a fantastic you know, piece of kit.
The things that you used to have to do to have a dedicated API coder in order just to get one little thing done, you can do that in 30 seconds.
That's right. Which is fantastic. Really. No, definitely. When you think about the amount of time that it can save people,
incredible.
It goes through the roof. Let's say that Zapier saves, you know, one of your team members 1 hour a day of work. It's 5 hours a week. That turns into 33 working days a year, you know, which is a huge amount of time.
Yeah, what's that, like 15% of your time?
Yeah,
cool. Well, do we have any questions, guys? Yeah, we've got some questions from...
I got one from Steve.
Oh, wow. Okay, what's Steve got for us?
How do I get the most out of my email marketing? You might just need to repeat it.
So Steve asks, how do I get the most out of my email marketing? Okay. Well, I guess define email marketing. You know, you can't just go out there and email everybody and anybody. You need to build a list first, I suppose.
Yes.
So it's a middle of the funnel activity. What are the things that you've seen work really well for that?
Yeah. So look, really good point, Cam. I think it's really important first to understand the profile of who's going to be receiving those emails. Is it cold outreach? Have you purchased a list? Have you built it yourself? Or is it existing customers? You know, are you looking at trying to monetize them, retain them? The key, the sort of key first step is understanding who the customers are, and then identifying what type of message you want to be sending them.
So you don't want it just to be a broadcast to all. This is the ability to actually start personalizing, I guess, some of the content for people.
I think personalization is super important. So the more that you can tailor a message, the more it's going to resonate. So the first sort of leading indicator you get with email marketing is the sort of received rate, or the number of bounces that you've got, which is really important to maintain a high level of data quality. quality. Yeah. So if you purchase a list, one of my old colleagues said that for every year that goes by, 20% of that list becomes irrelevant. So if you can build up your own lists, that's definitely one point towards quality. So you've got that bounce rate. The second key metric you've got is the open rate, and that's directly, I suppose, influenced by two things. First one is whether your email goes into the spam folder, which you might not have a huge amount of control over. The second one is the subject line. Are you calling your customer by name or the prospect by name in the subject line? Is it a very generic message, or is it going straight to the point about the message you want to solve? So that's a fantastic way to A/B test. The next thing that I would focus on optimizing would be the content of the email, making sure that you're nailing the message so that it's exactly what that type of customer needs to hear. If it's one of your most loyal customers, you don't want to be sending them an email that says, you should use this account more, or hey, sorry, we haven't seen you for a while.
This is going to annoy someone.
Yeah,
If
exactly.
they're a loyal customer, right?
Yeah, exactly. It will annoy them, and you don't want to do that. So, first step, profile. Second step, define exactly what message you want to send to each profile. Third step is test and experiment at that subject line level, and then the content within the email. Do you normally send emails which are text only? Can you add an image? Could you even experiment and send a video? These are all things which until you've tried, you can't definitely say it hasn't worked.
What an answer.
Yeah.
Mate, thank you for
No
the
problem.
detail. That was superb. Thanks, Simon. Great question. Another question from Sarah S.
What's the difference between marketing pre or post COVID-19?
So Sarah asks, what's the difference with marketing pre and post COVID-19? We've talked a little bit about that today.
Yeah. Good question. I think the first really sort of standout example would be the amount of businesses that relied on events for marketing. They're really not going to be able to count on events and conferences anymore, I think, unless they pivot more to a sort of live live stream audience. Perhaps Perth and Australia might be a little bit different, but you would
Maybe
have
not
a
Victoria,
lot of,
yeah.
That's right. But even so, I doubt we're going to be seeing as many companies going from Western Australia over East and vice versa to different marketing events. The second aspect, I think, comes down to cash flow and really maximizing the return on investment.
Sure.
We're seeing a lot of people out there on JobKeeper. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of redundancies. Businesses are trying to maximize their runway. So marketeers should really lead by example and ensure that they're aiming to optimize their costs per acquisition as much as possible. How can they do that? They should really look at their audiences when it comes to digital marketing. They should look at how they've previously acquired leads and emailing lists. Can they drive those costs down? They should look at what type of tools they're using from a marketing point of view, and can they minimize their spend on those? It's a combination of little incremental gains and cost savings, but marketeers who focus on that, I think, are going to be the ones that really thrive. And the sort of third point really comes down to what industry you're in. If you're a travel agent trying to sell overseas, trips, that's going to be something very hard to market.
Sure.
So, the marketing team at that point in time should lead by example and demonstrate to our product and the wider business, what we can sell. It's domestic trips, for example.
Yep, pivoting into those markets that do have demand.
Exactly.
Or generate demand in them.
Marketing is very, very in touch with consumers, with sentiment, and so they should really be pitching to businesses about how they can, create value and make money. They just got to get product on board.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's all we've got time for. Mate, how good is this guy? It's so full of information and wisdom, and it's been really fun riffing with you today. Lucas Calleja, mate, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And if anyone wants to find out more about you or look up your articles, where can they go?
Yeah, look, they can contact me on LinkedIn or compositus.com. Thanks very much, Cam, for the opportunity and the very kind words. I wish I could call you next time I need a reference.
Yeah, mate. Just post this podcast up. That's all you need to do, mate.
Yeah.
Look, thanks everyone for listening to Weird Growth. Bye-bye.
Thank you.